Broadcasting from Salisbury University campus, this is WSDL Ocean City, NPR News Talk 90.7. Putting Delmarva first. Stay tuned for Delmarva Today with your host, Don Rush.
A Republican finally did what many could not. Unseat Democratic State Senator Jim Mathias. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. Delegate and now State Senator-elect Mary Beth Carrozza won with 53% of the vote over Mathias in District 8, and she was reportedly recruited by Republican Governor Larry Hogan to challenge the Democrat. Mathias has always been fending off challenges by a few percentage points in the state legislature. He was first elected to the House of Delegates in 2006 and won the Senate seat in 2010. Before that, he served as mayor of Ocean City. His defeat also marks another loss for Eastern Shore Democrats after Norm Conway, who was chair of the House of Delegates Appropriations Committee, lost his seat a number of years ago. We have the senator in our studio this morning. Welcome to the program. So, how are you feeling after such a long time in public office?
Well, I still have so many days to go.
That's true.
But no, look, I'm grateful to the folks that allowed me the privilege. Just take a moment when you look at the mayors, the colorful mayors of Ocean City, and when the stories and the lore. But most importantly, when you're out on that beach, one of my greatest gratifications was being on that beach with Butch Arvin. We ride out on that beach on Saturday or Sunday, and you'd see the families under a big beach umbrella. You hear the oldies on the radio. You'd see them reading a book and with a bucket and sand, and just building memories that are going to last a lifetime. And then you kind of go forward from that to where George Washington stood. You know, I was afforded the privilege in 2011 to give the Washington speech and to stand where he stood, the father of our country, and to look at how our country has changed, but how much it has remained the same with our freedoms, protecting our freedoms. The men and women out in the field today, whether those fields are abroad or right here on the streets, you know, where we are keeping us safe. To be able to be a part of that, I thank every person that has found that confidence and trust in me. And I'm still here, as I said, you know, respectfully. Hi, friends, it's Jim, and I'm still here, and please reach out. But it's been fabulous. I can go full spectrum from our universities to the opportunities, the access to health care, to cancer patients. God bless my lovely wife. You know, she founded the Worcester branch of the American Cancer Society, and I pledged to her that I would carry on parity in treatments with, it was chemotherapy. That was IV versus oral, so easier, more quick, not easier, but more easier access, and all those kind of things. Healthcare, education, business. They're getting ready to launch another rocket down at Wallops. You know, these are the things. The best part of this job people afforded me is seeing tomorrow today. So we're looking forward to tomorrow now, perhaps in a different realm. But you know, I feel good. The most important thing, the measure, is the people who've spoken. That's what all the things I just talked about. Our armed services are out there protecting. That's what this whole process is about, is the people's voice. They've spoken, and I listened.
So, looking back here for a moment, what went wrong?
Well, I don't think what went wrong. It was bigger than us this time. I mean, really, I haven't seen the final numbers, but let's be frank about it. That's why you and I get along so well. The area has continued to trend Republican. I do not perform my politics in a partisan way. I never have. I've been about the Eastern Shore. Everything we're about, that's who I am. President Trump has aroused the base. You know, you look in some of the down ballot races here in Worcester County. We didn't have a sheriff. A Democratic sheriff was not there. We didn't have a Democratic state's attorney. In a couple of the House races, they were uncontested. What did that mean? In some of these races, folks that were still registered as Democrats re-registered as Republicans. The base was further aroused, not only by the president, but honestly the whole Kavanaugh hearings. People were incensed. People were coming up to me. Sometimes they thought perhaps I was a U.S. senator, but they knew quickly that I was a state senator, and I brought that respectfully to their attention, but they were incensed by the hearings and certain things that happened. It was a call to action. A month out, Governor Hogan's numbers down here were 76. The Democratic candidate, Jealous, was 21. My opponent did everything that she could do in the party to put me and him together because a simple handshake. They tried to portray me. Look, I wasn't able to be there with Governor O'Malley. He was my friend, the mayor of Baltimore, then the governor. I was the mayor of Ocean City. I had to stand alone from those races. I've always stood alone. But yet again, with all due respect, my opponent, the base was excited. My opponent and the strategist put me in a, I don't know if you got it, it was the three of us, I sing that song Mustang Sally, and it was the three of us in a red Mustang, like coming over the roads of the Eastern Shore, Ben Jealous, Martin O'Malley, and myself. And in some of these precincts, I haven't seen them all, Governor Hogan, and look, God bless him, he got 80%. He dwarfed the 76%. Some I hear he got 90%. A month ago, at least, he went up on TV. I vote with the bad guys. I'm the liberal from Baltimore. Oh my gosh, with all due respect, that's so far from true. And then the flood of the negativity. With all due respect, making it easier to get heroin in your community than ice cream. Saying I voted for all 38 or 39 of O'Malley's taxes. It's bunk. It's bunk. And I call them on it. Not in a terse way, but it's bunk. All I can say to you is when you have the convergence of all those issues that I just talked about, and still, we have at least 2 more absentee counts. I'm happy to tell you, and I'll give you right now my thoughts about it. Respectfully, we did win early voting by a couple hundred. I think it was maybe 1.9%. As of the moment, we're up in absentees. So it appears to me, simply, when you take and look at the earlier the vote is cast, if you look at it in the context of negative campaigning, it looks like the less exposed our voter is to that negativity, the better that they are, kind of more objectively informed. And again, it's about getting out the base. So nothing went wrong. I think, quite honestly, what has remained the standard in the most modest of senses is Jim. I've been the standard. Our farmers have called me on the phone, grain and poultry, our families, our educators. I'd mentioned to you earlier before we went on air, I got a personal Facebook message from Spain this morning from a young lady who I've worked very closely with regards to suicide prevention. And the tears, I went to a restaurant the other night I haven't really been in ever before, believe it or not, there is such one. And I thought, we're going to go in here. There were 8 tables there. Honestly, folks from all the tables came over. Some teared up. So, look, I'm not tearful. I'm joyful. We're getting ready to celebrate the holidays. I have a lot to be thankful for. But the behavior, I have to say, my son was cursed. He was talked to tersely. And I won't say what poll he was at all day. He's a medical school student, PhD. I won't get into it, But he was talked to tersely and cursed twice. My daughter was pregnant 6 months, was talked despicably to twice at the polls. And your dad ain't no good no more. I mean, with all due respect, is that what our politics are? I just asked everybody to do a little soul searching. I don't think any of us want that. Any of us. When we raise our children, when we profess who we are and what we are as a people, I'm not sure. I'm sure that's not our standard. We can't allow that to become our standard.
Let me ask you this. So one of the things that obviously in the campaign was that Mary Beth Carrozza, the Republican who won, certainly tied you to the top leadership, Democratic leadership in the state legislature. How do you think that approach to her campaigning will play with those people who are in the top leadership?
Well, respectfully, not well. Not well. But I will say to you that I just did an hour-long interview yesterday with Governing Magazine. They're getting ready to do a full feature in January on President Miller, who's the longest-serving state president, state Senate president in the United States of America. And despite all that, I can tell you one thing, he's from Maryland. So I think at some point, it'll all become objective. It'll become a part of history, but not well at all. The same way, how can in one part of the state, and look, this is very unabashed. Governor Hogan, who tells me he loves me, we went through all that before. In one part of the state, he's up there saying how he's bipartisan and putting his arms around the president and the speaker, but yet down here they're creating commercials and vilifying me for talking to the same guys. But you asked me a simple question: how's it going to play? Not well. Not well. The Strive for 5 failed. It failed.
Right, that would have created the
Right.
ability to uphold a veto.
An opportunity that would have allowed the veto to stand. It failed. But guess what else they lost? They lost the key to moderation. When I served with the other 32 Democratic senators in the caucus, I stood up and I was able to moderate the position many, many, many times. And I was able to broker. I was a bridge between Governor Hogan and President Miller and Speaker Bush. And I'm not making any bones about it. I was. And we collaboratively made a difference for what we needed here on the shore. Now that challenge goes to my opponent. We'll see. I was over at Veterans Day. I've always gotten along exceedingly well with all of our military veterans, police, fire, paramedics, and all. And I was talking to the Marines. The gentleman knows who he was. And he very boastfully, I said, I didn't vote for you. And I said, well, that's what you fought for. And that's what it's all about. I said, I think you might have made a mistake. I don't think I did. I said, well, check in on a year from now. And that's the test, with all due respect. That's the test. A year from now, 2 years from now, when the former President Bell from UMAS called, said that the millions of dollars weren't in there to do all the studies and the design work for the pharmacy building down there, and they were already up against the wall by losing the PA certification there. And I got the call at 10 of 10, and I went in before I went to the floor and knocked on the president's door, and I told him what the problem was that night. At 7:30, 8 o'clock, he came and fetched me out of dinner and said, I got you your money. That's called relationships. And that is what is the most important accomplishment I've achieved. And that's what, let's check in a year from now or 2 years from now and see how well it works out. My opponent's success is our success. My opponent's ideology may differ from ours, but our needs are the same. What we need here for education, higher education, curtailing the cost, rural health care delivery, our transportation, so many of the things that we need every day, and that takes collaboration.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that if she goes knocking on the Speaker's door or the Senate President's door, that there's going to be opened?
No, you'd have to ask them. I think, in public service, as a long-standing leader, yes. Yes. I think there'll be some frank conversation, as there should be, but leaders don't shut doors in people's faces. You can portray the leadership that I have earned the respect from and share the respect with across the full spectrum of party and political ideology, and they never shut doors in my face. Have we had our moments? Sure, I've been tersely spoken to by the Senate President, and I've been sometimes ignored by the Speaker and others. But you know what? That goes with the game. You watch any game, you see the coaches on the sideline. Sometimes the clipboards go up in the air and the earphones come off. But guess what? It's called sportsmanship. You don't shut doors in people's faces. Now, I don't think the doors will be shut.
Well, let me ask you this, because I've been here about 15 years or so, and one of the things that struck me is that many of the prominent Democratic representatives in Annapolis have been disappearing. I think about Norm Conway, who was in the delegate, chair of the Appropriations Committee. Now, you're obviously disappeared. It looks as if...
But we haven't disappeared.
Well, you're doing a good job there.
Our public acclaim
right.
for that office is we were outnumbered at the moment. But go ahead.
But nonetheless, I mean, do you think that the shore, from a legislative point of view, is perhaps losing as much representation or as much clout, for instance, as it perhaps would have had, for instance, yourself and say Conway? been reelected.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I mean, respectfully, I just said it minutes ago.
Yeah.
We were the bridges, and we were moderates. You know, look, there's dissension even in our own party with the progressive arm of the party, and you know, they were, I say patient, you know, they were patient. Sometimes they thought I was Republican light. I think there was a letter to the editor in the Daily Times this Sunday. But no, yeah, I think that, yes, our voices now are less present. Our moderation is not there at the table at the moment. I was given the opportunity, to be completely blunt, why wouldn't I be, to change my party. I was wooed. I'm not doing it, you know, because I don't vote party. Look, my grandmother was a riveter in the war and worked in a candy factory in Baltimore City. We lived in a row house. I said, Mom, I'm going down to vote, register to vote tomorrow. How should I vote? Only one damn way, Jimmy, Democrat, you simple. and you know, I can't tell you that every race ever that I've participated in, I voted democratically. But I could tell you one thing, I was sticking with my principles, you know, and my principles are humane. They're about people. And I could tell you, we have brokered the peace across party lines.
Let me ask you this. At least at this point, it seems to be, and you tell me if you think this is true, that the Eastern Shore and certainly rural areas have benefited from the fact that Larry Hogan, who obviously sees that as his political base, certainly, that we've benefited from the fact that there is this Republican who's sitting in the governor's office who actually sees his base as being rural as opposed to the big cities. Do you think that?
Sure,
although obviously it won't last forever, right?
No. But look,
Right.
I get along well. I don't like the behavior that I just experienced, but I get along well, you know, with the governor. Some people say, "How can you even say that?" But no, look, being attuned to our more rural base and needs, I applaud the governor. At the same point in time, let's be honest, ECI. He turned a deaf ear to ECI for a long time.
Eastern Correctional Institution.
Okay, that's right, in the staffing issues there. A deaf ear, folks, if you missed me the first time. Okay? And you go and get those families here, okay, and the risk that they endured down there, and the folks that still had a number of viable years left in their career that retired out because they were fearful of their safety. Now, here's a governor who has lifted up the Eastern Shore and did nothing for them down there. So look, it kind of cuts both ways. When I came to the call 2 years ago, and I came to the call and I stood with those families down there, I didn't put my finger respectfully in the governor's eye. I didn't provoke him. I'm not provoking him today. Yeah, he's been there for our needs, but some he's missed. And that's a serious one down there.
Let me ask you this. Your career, you started out, I think, in Ocean City. You were ultimately mayor. What do you remember best about being mayor of Ocean City?
Well, we won the All-America City Award. I mean, that was fabulous. You know, my late wife, she was the coordinator. She was the assistant to the city manager. But we went and competed with 100 cities across the United States of America. And where we won was in Atlanta, Georgia, the birthplace of Dr. Martin Luther King. And we took the performing arts choir from Stephen Decatur High School. And personally, I took them to Dr. King's birthplace and to his church and to the Eternal Flame to show what difference one person could make. When they said Ocean City won, 10 cities won across out of 100. The roof, I think we're still paying to fix the roof there. We went through the roof. Fabulous. When we went to Katrina, we went out under armed guard and fed children that hadn't eaten, which we didn't even realize, in a handful of days. And when that young man came through for the third time and somebody in the line said, "Young man, didn't you just come through?" He said, "Yes, sir, but I haven't eaten in 2 or 3 days and I don't want that to happen again." When we went to Ground Zero, there's a piece of steel entombed in the firefighters' memorial that was given to me from a governor, from the mayor there, from Mayor Giuliani. We were there 5 days after the attack. Clay Stamp. We went back up. He sat in the EOC and down at Pier 92, I believe. I know the original EOC collapsed. We were there 5 days after the attack. It was like turning off the volume. Watching our people come together learning from Fish Powell, God bless his soul. Harry Kelly. I was the first person in the world that ever had a Guinness World Book pinball marathon. I was 24 years old, weighed 135 pounds, smoking cigarettes. And who do you think cut the ribbon? Mayor Harry Kelly. Little did I ever know that I would follow in his footsteps. And you know who I say thanks to? The people of Ocean City, my family. I can go a full spectrum. When we fought the good fight, if you recall, the wooden boardwalk ended right there at Division Street in front of Tony's, and it became concrete all the way up to the ramp down at in front of Trimpers there at South Division Street. And some of my colleagues that are still serving today wanted to make that a brick paver promenade, and I said no, that's a boardwalk, man. That's a boardwalk. That's what we're all about there. That's what people come there, you know. And they said, no. I don't know if you remember. And I was able to convince a reporter in the Daily Times to cause them to do a poll. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Overwhelmingly, they said a wooden boardwalk. When I stood up there and we dedicated that wooden boardwalk, we put that archway there, a central place. Lieutenant Governor Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, I have the picture with the fireworks going on. We continued to keep the legacy of who we are alive, and on and on and on. Serving in the fire company, when we would be first on the scene, whether it was in the high rises or a biplane accident that went down, and working out there and being at the lead, all the way across the spectrum. But most importantly, as I said earlier, that young lady today from Spain. Or when I just went, I'm a bell ringer chair for Salvation Army. I came in, you know, the road, no good deed goes unpunished. I thought I had plenty of time on my hands this morning. I walked out and spilled coffee over myself on the floor. When I got there, and I called to let them know I was coming, people came over and took my hand and just said, thanks. That is the greatest gift God can give you, is helping people. And in any capacity. I just came over here. A man's car was overheating, and I pulled up to help him. I mean, but that's who I am. That's who I hope that I've been able to inspire. And I know you may have some more questions, but the greatest thing I hope that I've been able to achieve with everybody's support was inspiring the next generation.
Let me ask you this, and you know, you moved obviously under the House of Delegates and then ultimately to the state Senate. What was the most difficult thing, do you think, about being a legislator like that? And as opposed, for instance, a mayor. Mayor's got an executive position, got responsible for all these things. Right? What do you think was the most difficult thing for you to overcome or deal with as a state legislator?
Well, the numbers, you know, 1 of 71 in the House. I had modestly achieved notoriety and some prominence as a mayor. But then in order to be effective to get a bill passed, you had to find that majority in committee, and then you had to find it again on the floor. And then the same thing, you know, 1 of 24 over in the Senate. And figuring out collaboratively how to build that alliance. So for me, you know, look, we had our tensions on the council. I was a city council member. We had our tensions on the council. We had our tension, you know, as the mayor. Look, these aren't wallflowers. Folks in elected office aren't wallflowers. Everybody has their thoughts and their ideas. Finding that balance, and it was tough to do. You know, I didn't always have this full shock of white hair. And my daughter sent me a picture from the campaign grounds in 1988 when I was managing Jimmy Hall's campaign. I looked like Rod Stewart. But you know, along comes, you know, maturity. Along comes experience. So the most challenging thing for me was finding that, building those relationships, and knowing that was that collaborative effort that led to achievement for your people.
Let me ask you this. So you've been obviously a long time on the shore. You and certainly represented it. How do you see the area having changed over that long span of time that you've been a public official?
Well, certainly far more developed. And I will say that the opportunities do exist here. I think that I'm a business guy. I've been in business over 40 years. We have, some circles, we've extended our seasons here in tourism and the like. Certainly, I think we've been able to lift the respect. I don't like that word, but being able to make sure we brought the consciousness forward for agriculture, for poultry, for our commercial watermen, for the legacy of the shore. But clearly, I think that with Chairman Conway and our delegation, and modestly myself, we've been able to bring capital projects here. Route 113, the dualization of Route 113.
Right.
They started that project plus or minus in like 1970, and they had like I don't know what it would have been, 7 or so different legs of it, and they had accomplished like 1 or 2, and it sat dormant until when Chairman Conway and I were together in the House during the Great Recession, when every other road project in Maryland was killed. We were able to get that one done. Only 2 were passed. We were able to get that one done, and then came behind it when they finally passed the federal transportation budget. I called the chairman on the phone. I read it in the paper in the morning. I said, we got to go see Governor O'Malley. And we were there. We put it right in front of him. He said, look, I don't know if you all are going to get this, but you're the first ones that have come here. So raising the consciousness of the needs of the shore. But we're thriving. I tried to get Governor Hogan down at Wallops Island. I got the budget secretary, David Brinkley, down there. We did that $40 million tax credit for Northrop Grumman. They have a bigger presence here now. These are the emerging opportunities of tomorrow. So the things that we've been able to accomplish and achieve, and the consciousness that we've raised, again, I said to you, and during the debate, the greatest experience, the most gratifying experience I've had in my life was going to my grandmother's home after church on Sunday and having Sunday dinner there. By 4 o'clock, the whole family was there, 25 of us, and we talked about where we were going, what we were doing, who was going to have a baby, who wasn't doing well. The brain drain you hear on the shore, what I have been committed to and remain committed to, vocational training and the like, and burgeoning opportunity here, is to make sure that 4 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon here around the family table in the kitchen on the Eastern Shore, that our families are together, that they're not FaceTiming in from Florida or Chicago or California. Everybody has a itch they want to scratch, and they want to go to New York, or they want to go out to the West Coast. I understand that, but I urge you to scratch that itch. But what I want to make certain here is the opportunities here. Our greatest asset here on the shore are our families, and I worked hard and will continue to work hard to make sure that there are opportunities here for their families to grow strong.
The few minutes we have left, what do you make of the political atmosphere that we seem to be living in at this moment? And obviously we just had a recent election in which Democrats have taken over the House. But what do you make of this atmosphere that we now seem to be living, which seems, I think, dramatically different than perhaps in the past? And where did it start? I mean, how did this happen? You've been in politics a long time.
My gosh, I don't know how it happened, but all due respect, let's be blunt, if I ever talked to people like that, I certainly wouldn't be here. I would have been run out of town. I mean, I've been run out of town. I watched the presidential campaign as it was escalating in 2016. And I said, well, this has nothing to do with kindness. There's no way this can be. No way this can be. Now, other Democratic operatives told me the minute they saw the president come down that escalator, they knew that was the person. I think some people feel like they were disenfranchised for a long period of time, and he appears to be speaking to them, and they have a voice, and they have an emotional fervor about themselves. I've tried to avoid all that. The funny thing, I brought Miss USA to Maryland 2 years in a row, and didn't even realize when it came to my attention as the mayor that the president now was the owner of Miss USA.
That's right.
I wrote him a letter when he got elected as president. I said, we've enjoyed success. I look forward to continued success. I don't know where it is or how it is, but I can tell you my part is to not participate in it. We've kept it on the high road. We're going to keep it on the high road. I hope, as I said before, that those folks that spoke to Trevor that way or Lauren that way, they know who they are. They know why they spoke to him that way. I hope that we can calm their soul and understand that the soul and their commitment is our country and the decency that we founded. You see those portraits and pictures of our legislators sitting around the fire back in the 1700s and 1800s with those long pipes and whatever was in those cups. I know they had dissension back in those days, but they found common ground to move forward. I don't know how this has happened. I hope that it is a moment in time, and that we can be more about being Marylanders and about being Americans, about being Eastern Shore folks, and because we all got great hearts and a fabulous family to make sure that we remain committed to for our future.
Real quick, we think about running again for any office?
Sure.
Maybe.
I mean, the machinations aren't here.
Right. Now, this
right
was
now.
too early.
No,
Right.
no. Clearly, look. I thrive on public service, and I love it. As I mentioned to you earlier, I mean, I'm still picking up kind of like the pieces, and but yes, I love people, and I have been able to learn right firsthand how to be successful and effective in building alliances. If that's in public service, great. If that's in the private sector for folks that need that representation and that voice, that'll work too. But absolutely, and I want to say I thank you,
Sure.
and I thank all those who've been part of it, and those that have had questions. I hope that I can answer those questions for you one day in another race, maybe.
I think we got a maybe there. I appreciate you taking the time to stop by. We've been talking with State Senator Jim Mathias, who will be leaving office in January, but a long career, political career, particularly here on the Eastern Shore. Appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us.
Absolutely. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy holidays to all.
This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for watching Delmarva Today, a production of Delmarva Public Radio. Production and audio engineering by Chris Rank. Hosted by Don Rush. For podcasts, visit delmarvapublicradio.net or subscribe to the Delmarva Today podcast on iTunes. Delmarva Today can now be seen on PAC 14.